Donald Trump, along with senior national security leaders and his closest advisors, was forced to convene a meeting as the administration slid into a rare state of turmoil. Public outrage is spreading at an alarming pace. Calls for impeachment are no longer limited to Donald Trump, but have expanded to include a wide range of security and justice officials, from the Secretary of Homeland Security to senior federal law enforcement leaders. Slogans calling to abolish ICE are appearing everywhere, reflecting an unprecedented level of distrust toward immigration and customs enforcement. At the same time, demands are growing for the prosecution of those responsible for deaths in ICE detention centers, with a haunting figure repeated again and again: more than 30 deaths last year, and between 7 and 9 so far this year. These numbers are no longer just statistics. They have become symbols of accusations that the system is operating beyond control. It was against this backdrop that the emergency meeting in the Oval Office took place. But instead of delivering a clear and decisive message, what the public received afterward was ambiguity. Some reports claim that Greg Bovino, the head of the Border Patrol, had been fired or demoted. Other accounts suggested it was merely a temporary reassignment. The White House neither confirmed nor denied the reports, nor did it offer a unified explanation. This lack of clarity has only reinforced the sense that the administration is reacting in panic, no longer able to control the tempo of the crisis. This discontent is not confined to civil society. It has begun to seep into the ranks of the Republican Party. The biggest shock came from Minnesota, where Chris Matt, a Republican Party candidate for governor, abruptly announced the end of his campaign.
I announced the end of my campaign. I have two primary reasons for this decision. Number one, I cannot support the National Republican's stated retribution on the citizens of our state, nor can I count myself a member of a party that would do so. I support the originally stated goals of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement's Operation Metro Surge in locating and deporting the worst of the worst from our state. And I've seen many examples of ICE arresting non-U.S. citizens in Minnesota convicted of serious crimes, including murder, rape, and child sexual assault. No reasonable person should want these people here, and I am glad that they are gone. But Operation Metro Surge has expanded far beyond its stated focus on true public safety threats.
Chris Matt's decision to withdraw carries significance far beyond one individual or a failed campaign. It is a public signal that the Republican Party's brand is being severely eroded. Minnesota is not a far-left state, yet the Republican Party's loss of competitiveness there shows that the damage has spread even into areas once considered genuinely contestable. Donald Trump, who once built his political advantage on immigration and hardline security messaging, is now seeing those very issues drag down his credibility. As the federal administration struggles to regain its footing, Republican Party lawmakers at both the federal and state levels have begun to show signs of unease. Some have openly called for independent investigations into shootings involving ICE, pushing back against what they see as premature conclusions by the Department of Homeland Security without sufficient evidence. These calls, though still cautious, mark an important turning point. The MAGA movement is no longer a perfectly unified bloc. As outrage moves beyond protests and media criticism into demands for legal accountability, the crisis has entered an entirely new phase. In Congress, Democratic lawmakers have begun speaking openly about what they call the hard lessons from the previous period. Many point out that after the 2020 election, the failure to swiftly hold individuals accountable for actions widely viewed as serious violations created a dangerous precedent. Without deterrence, those in power come to believe they can continue crossing lines without paying a price. That mindset, Democrats argue, is now reappearing in how the Trump administration is handling ICE and federal security forces. At the center of this political storm is ICE and the Operation Metro Surge campaign. Initially, the operation was presented as a targeted effort to pursue the most dangerous criminals in order to protect public safety. Over time, however, that boundary boundary appears to have blurred. Reports and first-hand accounts from the field suggest the campaign expanded into broad-based enforcement, with multiple cases of U.S. citizens being pulled over, detained, and required to produce identification. ICE's use of civil warrants signed internally by Border Patrol officials has been sharply criticized by legal experts and civil rights groups as unconstitutional, arguing that it grants law enforcement excessive power without independent judicial oversight. The House Oversight Committee has emerged as a central battleground. Proposals for subpoenas, hearings, and independent investigations are being introduced at an accelerating pace. Not only Donald Trump, but also figures seen as architects of the hardline approach, from Department of Homeland Security officials to national security advisors, are being named. The message is unmistakable. This time, there will be no turning the page without concrete accountability. Alongside pressure from Congress, growing force is coming from states and local governments. Governors and mayors in multiple jurisdictions have openly criticized how ICE operates, arguing that federal actions are undermining fragile relationships between authorities and communities. Some states are even considering legal measures to restrict or more tightly monitor ICE activities within their borders. This signals that the conflict is no longer confined to partisan lines, but is becoming a confrontation between the federal government and other levels of government. In response, the White House has tried to counterattack by shifting the focus back to law and order messaging. Donald Trump continues to insist that hardline measures are necessary to protect America, while accusing political opponents of weakening law enforcement. Unlike in earlier periods, however, this strategy is no longer delivering the desired results. Polls show a significant decline in voter confidence in the administration's handling of immigration, particularly among moderate and independent voters. Within the Republican Party, fractures continue to widen. Some lawmakers are trying to keep their distance from the White House, avoiding joint appearances or strong public statements in support of ICE. Others remain fully loyal to Trump, but their tone has become increasingly defensive rather than aggressive. This divide reflects a reality that is hard to conceal. The Republican Party is trapped between two risky choices: either continue tying its fate to Trump or accept the loss of part of its core base in an effort to salvage the party's long-term image. Internationally, the situation is not standing still either. As traditional U.S. allies watch domestic instability unfold, they are simultaneously advancing new agreements and alliances that exclude Washington. The large-scale trade agreement signed between the EU and India is widely seen by analysts as a signal that U.S. global leadership is being eroded. Together, these developments are creating a dangerous feedback loop. Domestic instability weakens international standing, and that weakness feeds back into mounting political pressure at home. For Donald Trump, this is the most precarious position he has faced since returning to the White House. Every decision carries high risk, and there is little room left to maneuver without paying a price.